Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. In this short episode, I want to go over one of the most important skills you can develop as a developer. And it's not coding related per se, not behavioral. This is one of those things people don't talk about enough. It's how to use Visual Studio Code like a pro. Or at the very least, how not to annoy the other developers on your team when you get hired and are a professional paid developer. I suffered from this problem that many of you do as well. I knew how to write code. I was writing code for a couple years, got hired. I was working at a really fast-paced startup, which I've spoken about a couple of times. And there I was pair programming with the most senior developer on the team. And he got annoyed with me pretty quickly. Not only because I just kind of sucked at writing code at this point, but I was so terrible at using VS Code that he actually says, hey, you know what? I'm going to kick back for a minute and let's come back tomorrow. But what I want you to do is I want you to learn how to use your text editor, VS Code, and get really familiar with it so we don't spend so much time bumbling around with the keyboard. He said this to me pretty matter-of-factly, and I was like, oh, okay. I'd been writing code for a couple years already at this point, and I had no clue just how terrible I was at using my text editor. And you might think, well, who cares? Like, what's the big deal? You're paid to code, right? You're not paid to use your text editor really well. Let me tell you, as a developer, you're going to be using Visual Studio Code. 70% of professional developers, according to the Stack Overflow survey from last year, are using Visual Studio Code. It's as dominant as React.js is. It's one of those things you're just going to come across and everybody uses it. So why not get good at it? And it's not just getting good for the sake of getting good, like, oh, look at me, I can fly around my text editor. It makes it so when you're pairing with somebody else, when you're working with another teammate and you're working in the same kinds of editor, then you can quickly find things and understand how to navigate a code base, because code bases can be really, really large. In fact, when you get on a job, if it's not some super small startup, you're going to be interacting with a large code base. How do you quickly find files? How do you find instances of a certain text? How do you find that thing you just changed? How do you quickly edit things? How do you fly around the keyboard and be more efficient with your time? Because those minutes add up to hours, those hours add up to days, those days add up to months, and those months add up to years if you're at the same company for a really long time. And that might seem like hyperbole, like, wait, what are you talking about? Is it really that serious? Yes, it is. Because whether or not somebody tells you, if you don't know how to use that editor, you're going to annoy the other people on your team at best. And at worst, you're going to find yourself just being much slower, less efficient, and not able to get into as much of a flow when you're writing your code, which is incredibly important. So I'm going to lay out a bunch of tips, really simple stuff you can do, keyboard shortcuts, and how to organize your editor in a way that's going to supercharge your coding. So much of writing code for larger applications is being efficient in finding code, moving blocks of text around, and leveraging tools to do repetitive tasks. If you're struggling to find files or wasting time with the intricacies of your editor, it makes the experience of working with you tedious and at worst, kind of painful. So I want to share with you some of the most common shortcuts you're going to need to know when you're using VS Code. Before that, though, I have a small favor to ask of you. I am considering doing a data engineering program at Parsity and doing a Python 30 program. I'm working with a senior engineer at Amazon right now to scaffold out the curriculum because I want to explore how we can incorporate data engineering into the curriculum at Parsity. If you're interested in it, please hit me up on LinkedIn, message me through this show. If you're listening on Spotify or something like that, or Buzzsprout, you can actually directly message me. Get in touch with me however you want to and just tell me like, yeah, I think that's a cool idea. Or, no, I'd actually be more interested in learning this. I'm very bullish on learning data engineering and incorporating it because I see it expanding and exploding as a career in software engineering. At the same time, though, I see software engineering as a higher leveraged skill in general, but I don't think there's any reason why we can't offer both of these different disciplines that use a lot of the same core principle. Also, I had a really awkward conversation with a person that was interested in Parsity yesterday, and I want to address this here on this show because I bet a lot of you might be thinking or experiencing this too. He was going to join Parsity, but then he pulled back last minute, and I was really shocked, and I asked why. And he was pretty open with me, and it hurt to hear this, but I'm really glad he did actually. He said it was hard to find evidence of people succeeding from the program that is recent, and also that our website looked a little bit dated and didn't have the statistics updated. And he was absolutely correct. I had been working very hard on the curriculum for Parsity, working with our mentors, adding things like mock interviews, working on getting guest speakers into the program, basically doing all the behind the scenes work that you just don't see. And what hurt the most about hearing this is that I had just congratulated somebody for getting a job that exact same day that he said this. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of tragically hilarious. Like, here we are congratulating a student for getting a job. And here we are, a few weeks before that, congratulating another student for getting a job. And this person's like, I have no indication that this program works. And we had been publishing statistics through a third-party resource. That resource has since basically gone out of business. How much do you trust that our statistics are transparent when we are providing them to you? I don't know, but I am having our career services person go through them and republish them without me being involved, because I do want to make sure that they are accurate and fair and open. So you say, okay, I know what I'm kind of getting into. At the end of the day, I think the website needs to reflect where we are currently with Parsity and where we're going. So we are going to be working on that. It's something that I didn't take seriously enough. So if you are on the fence, I feel bad if people have seen that and then go to some more inferior program and then come back to me 6 months later and say, oh, I wish I'd gone to your program. Part of me as a business hurts, but then also just as a human and thinking, I wish we could have helped this person out, got them closer to the finish line than some other program out there. Anyway, that's enough for me, but please hit me up about this Python 30 program. I'm really excited about it, but I want to hear from you if you are as well, and it's going to be the same price as Dev 30. And if you want to learn JavaScript, which I think you should, go to dev30.xyz. Anyway, back to these shortcuts you need to know in VS Code. Let's start at the very basics. You'd be really surprised how many people don't know this stuff. I'm going to tell you these commands as a Mac user. I just started a new job where I'm using Windows, and I'm using basically the same thing. So you can substitute command for control in most instances here, but I'll tell you a few times when you actually need to use a different keyboard shortcut if you're using Windows. So copy, command plus C or control plus C. Paste, command plus V, control plus V. And save, command plus S or control plus S. Again, you'd be shocked how many people don't know this stuff. If you want to find stuff, if you want to search for text within all files, maybe you're looking for everywhere where somebody wrote cat dog, command shift F or control shift F on Windows. If you're searching for a folder and you want to use fuzzy mashing, for example, there's tons of folders in every project you're going to go into. If you want to find a folder using fuzzy mashing, which you type in a phrase or word or pattern, and it returns all the different files which match that pattern, you do command plus P. And then a little search bar will appear in the top and you'll type in the name, like, utils or something like that. And we'll show you all the different files that have the name util in them, not in the actual content of the file, but the name, which is really, really helpful when you're trying to search for something. So command plus P or control plus P opens up that toolbar, type it in. If you want to go to a specific line number within a file, control plus G. Sometimes that's helpful if you're looking for a very specific line number and you're looking through a bunch of them. You don't want to scroll down or something like that. Fairly helpful, but that's probably not one you use too much. When it comes to manipulating text, if you want to move a line of text or a block of text up or down, you can highlight that line or that block and then hold down Option and press arrow up or arrow down. So on a Mac, it's Option plus arrow up or arrow down. On a Windows machine, it is Alt plus arrow up or arrow down. That's really helpful when you're moving blocks of text around and you don't want to copy and paste them everywhere. If you just want to move it up a few lines or down a few lines, super, super useful. Sometimes you want to select multiple instances of the same text. Like maybe you misspelled the word dog, the DOG, you put DAWG like a fool or something like that. So to select multiple instances of the same text, you highlight that particular text, hold down Command or Control on a Windows, and press D. You press D multiple times to continue selecting more and more instances. So you tap D to select the next instance and D again to select the next instance. And you can just keep hitting D a bunch of times till you select every single instance. And then you can delete them all. You can correct them all. Super, super helpful if you want to make a bunch of edits in the same file without having to do copying and pasting a bunch of times. This will save you a ton. When it comes to comparing files, sometimes you want to have two files open at the same time where you can either compare the same file or you can look at one file and another one in the same instance so you can reference different things from them. To split the screen vertically, Command plus backslash or Control plus backslash. To split the screen horizontally, Command plus Shift plus backslash. Miscellaneous things that you might find useful. If you want to close a window, Command W or Control W. If you want to open a new window, Command plus N as in Nancy or Control plus N as in Nancy. If you want to open up the integrated terminal, which means that terminal that is integrated into Visual Studio Code. So if you're running something like React or Next.js or Angular, and you don't want to have a separate terminal where you're going back and forth, just use the Visual Studio integrated terminal. Press Option plus backtick. The backtick is that funny little character that is right under the escape key on most laptops. Now here's a really cool feature that's not a keyboard shortcut, but will make your life a whole lot easier when you're working in a really large code base. Let's say you come across a function and you want to know where that function came from. You're thinking, man, this function is used in 100 different files, which is not uncommon, and you're trying to see where it's defined. So it's defined in one file and then will be used throughout the code base. If you want to find where that function was originally defined, you can hold Command and click on it, and it will take you to that particular file. If you're on a Windows machine, you'd hold Control and click on it. Super, super helpful. It lets you know, like, oh, that's where this thing is defined, and that's how it has the logic, and that's how it's been made. Really, really helpful. If you want to open up your keyboard shortcuts, Command plus K plus S. And see that last shortcut that I want to go over right there? That is the most important one, because this is where you can change the key bindings by opening up the keyboard shortcuts and use your own special key combinations that make sense for you. So you can go through there and peruse all the different stuff that VS Code can do and all the shortcuts that VS Code has out of the box. And then you can make a few that make sense for you. For example, I like to toggle my File Explorer so I can open and close my File Explorer by doing Command plus 1 or Control plus 1 on my Windows machine. That's like the first thing I did. I have a few little keyboard shortcuts that I like to do to make my editor like work for me really well. If I do something a lot of times, then I'm going to want to make it easy for me to use. These shortcuts may seem pretty trivial, but trust me, these are going to increase your productivity and at the very least make you a whole lot more enjoyable to pair with. And if you're curious about these shortcuts, I have them in the show notes so you can just copy them, look them over. They're written for Mac users, but it's pretty simple to translate them to Windows machines. I just got a Windows machine for my new job, and I've been doing the exact same thing that I'm telling you to do here. Trust me, if you want to look cool, if you want to be more efficient, do this kind of stuff. Hope that was helpful, and I'll see you next week. That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Varsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.